Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, and welcome back to our Planet Coaster 2 series here in Planet Coaster 2. This is our challenge park here, and we're having fun. So in the last episode, we built the worm mine, which is sort of a transition between this area and the next area. We've got this lovely little thing, and off camera I sorted this corner, which means that this area of the park is complete now. I did say in the last episode that we would kind of turn around and we'd move over here and we'd start over here with our next area, but I'm not quite done sort of planning that out behind the scenes. So instead, we are going to do something a little bit smaller, something a little bit more interesting down here, just as a little bit of an aside before we sort of get to finishing it off. And the last thing I thought I'd mention before we go into a time-lapse is our park rating is very nearly at 5 stars. I had not noticed that, but we are almost a 5-star park. So by the time we are finished with this series, we truly will have become the Roller Coaster Tycoons. I know that's the wrong series, but the sentiment still stands. So what is it we're doing today? Well, I will explain in the time-lapse in a moment. Take it away. Yes, hello, and welcome to the time-lapse. And so I lied last episode when I said we were starting something, starting the last area of the park, but again, as I said in the introduction to this episode, unfortunately, I have been having a little bit of a think around it about behind the scenes, and I haven't actually had time to plan out what I'm doing. And I know my thesis is the wrong word. I know that my sentiment with this whole park has been, we don't need to plan it out, we'll just see what happens. But I've got a really good idea for this last area, and I thought actually we can do something really cool if we've got the time to think about it. So instead we are just filling in a bit of blank space that we had to work with, and the whole idea for this came about because, again, I looked at this and I had a piece of path running from what is the back of the pirate area and sort of the exit to the maze, and that ran all the way down to meet this path here, which is coming out the backside of the fairy tale area. And so I thought, well, what else to do but just create something a little bit interesting to play around with. And so what I have decided to do is, we're finally getting to the reasoning. No more stalling for time. We are creating, quote-unquote, a Victorian village. Now, these are staples kind of across the UK. My biggest example, you will have heard me talk about the park in the past, but is Flambards in Cornwall. And I know that sort of it's closed now, but their Victorian village is moving elsewhere, which I am looking forward to, because actually it means this wonderful piece of history is going to be preserved. And so I was inspired by this Victorian village. For a bit of context, it was this walkthrough attraction where you sort of take a wander through scenes and dioramas that make it feel like, well, what else, a Victorian village? Which is shocking, I know. So I thought I'd sort of pay homage to it here by creating my own little Victorian village street. And it just works as a really nice sort of connector between these two areas of the park. And it sort of caps out really how big this area at the back of the park is going to be. And I'm sure I'll get a little bit more into what that's going to be as this episode goes on. But for now, sort of, what is the reasoning behind some of these choices? Well, this brick, it comes from the townhouse set. It's from the sorcery pack, and actually I felt like it really fit sort of this Victorian vibe really well. And so I had this vibe of being very sort of classical, very sort of townhouse, shockingly, and I went, that's perfect, but what are these white bits that are sticking out that I'm working so ever so brilliantly on here? Well, apologies. One of the big things about the architecture style in the Victorian era is that it wasn't necessarily one specific style. I mean, yes, you had the sort of very classic, what we might call Victorian architecture. But there are also bits and pieces here like, you know, big glass things like the Royal Exhibition, all of that. But that's not what I'm here for. What I'm here for is the mock Tudor movement. And this was sort of a big movement of architecture where you'd have these buildings that were recreated and made in sort of this style to look like they were from the Tudor period, with sort of the beams and the beams and framework and structure to match, just slightly more robust. And I really, really like that style. And you know, I've sort of attempted it here and there. I think the closest we've got to it was in our Christmas park that we did, our lovely little festive park. If you haven't seen it, all the episodes are on the channel. But like I say, I think the interesting thing about it here, though, is that there it was more Bavarian Alpine, whereas here it is very much the mock Tudor. And I think there is something about this mock Tudor style that I just really like. And while we're not building any rides or stuff in this episode, I feel like this does showcase the strengths of Planet Coaster 2, not as a not just as a park builder, but as a model making kit. I think it's really fun. I've done various bits and pieces in the game that aren't necessarily theme parks and stuff. More so in Planet Zoo, where there was a wider array of pieces in real architectural styles. For example, I've got a story that I'm working on behind the scenes and stuff, and the idea behind me taking it into Planet Zoo is that it's very easy in Planet Zoo to make something that looks really nice in terms of an architectural style, and it was kind of a really nice way to get in and create just a mock-up of this almost Wild West town. So that's something. And if you do want to see me play something like Planet Zoo, then please let me know in the comments. I have had a couple of ideas on stuff to do if I end up doing something like Planet Zoo. You know, I do enjoy it. I know Planet Zoo 2 is coming out soon, and that is absolutely wonderful news. So whether or not you want to see me play the original before everything goes down, well, everything goes and turns to Planet Zoo 2, just please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we will just keep on keeping on as we are. And speaking of games that have just been, well, I know Planet Zoo 2 has not just been announced, but speaking of games that have been announced, now this is a slightly diversion from, you know, Planet Coaster, Planet Zoo, Frontier, all of that, but I feel like it's fun to mention because I absolutely love the series. But the Forza games and Playground games have finally announced Forza Horizon 6, which I am so looking forward to. Everything that they've done looks really good and really exciting, and I cannot wait to eventually get my hands on it when it comes out. So again, if you want to see me do something with that, well, it's there and I can see what I can do. But there we go. I apologise that there's not really much we can look at in this episode. It's mostly just me placing bits and pieces down, but we can use this as a bit of a chat time. So obviously we are approaching now slowly the end of this Planet Coaster series, which is sad. But it just means that we are making necessary steps towards our next project, which is going to be a really fun one. It's something I've had sort of cooking around in my mind for absolutely ages, and it's something that I can kind of bring from my mind to, well, firstly to the page, because I have been planning this out. I've got everything in mind for this next series that we do on this channel. But secondly, I'm really looking forward to getting into it and actually building some stuff. I've mocked a couple of bits and pieces up in the game already, which I can just port over from my testing ground parks. But aside from that, I'm really looking forward to actually playing around with these ideas that I've got floating around. And that is the beauty of Planet Coaster 2, you don't necessarily have to do one thing or the other. You can do whatever you want, and that is where we're coming in here. So we've built these mock Tudor extensions to the top of these houses, and I think they look really nice. So the next step we're doing is basically just infrastructure and placing down doors for the next 5 minutes. So that is all fun stuff. Now you may be wondering where we're going next in this park. Well, as I say, we've got one area left. It may be that we return to this series in the future, kind of after, post the next episode or whatever. Well, post the next area. If they bring back things like hotels, things like that, I wouldn't be opposed to returning to maybe do some extensions on this park. But really, where we're going next in this park is this big budget area at the back of the park, because what we've done so far is very much smaller budget, but now we're at a point where we can start thinking about bringing more money into this park, because we've got all of this money in reserves, so I think we can now afford to use it, which should be good. And we've used all of the base game, all of the original game themes in some form or another, apart from sci-fi, but that can be something that we possibly look into making some extensions on in the future. But we have used pirates, we've used fairy tales, so there's only really one place to go next, and that is the Wild West. So that will be where we are looking at starting next episode. I've got a really fun idea in mind on where we're starting with that and where that is ultimately going. But yeah, no, it is all fun stuff. Now, what I'm doing very quickly here is just covering up this this plaster from the this limestone, from the back of this area, because I think it just looks a little bit nicer to have this consistent architectural style throughout this village. And I know these are slightly skew with, but I think that's all fine. Now, I did come down here to ground level just to see how that all looked. It looked a little bit so there we go. But yeah, no, we are heading off to the Wild West next, and again, the idea is big budget. So the way that I see it, over the episodes of this park, we have slowly been increasing in budget and increasing in when it was made, if that makes any sense. So if we're thinking about a fictional history of this park, some of the first rides to be built will have been some of the first ones, and some of the ones in the around the gardens, and then as it's grown, you'll had areas with more budget, like this small fairy tale area, and then that will ultimately have led to the absolutely massive budget area that we are doing in the next episode. And again, you may look at me and go, that completes the whole point, that defeats the whole point, of this being a budget challenge park series. But at the end of the day, this is my park. I get to do with what I want, and what I really, really want is to what I really want is to just have something in this park be slightly bigger, slightly more impressive. And I've got this perfect idea, so we will have to wait for the next episode to view that. And, while we're placing these windows and doors down here, we are slowly coming towards the end of this time-lapse segment. Slowly. Don't worry, we've still got a couple more minutes, but this has been a slightly shorter episode, which is fun. It's always fun when I do these massive episodes of, here's me doing, 20 minutes of time-lapse footage, half an hour of time-lapse footage, or in the case of our Mandalore series, which is really cool, you should go check it out, here's half an hour in real time. But in terms of this, why would we need that when we can just do something small, do something isolated? And I think it looks really nice at the end of the day. It's these smaller things that really make the park breathe, and it's these details kind of surrounding everything else that really makes it look quite nice. So we're just putting down these lights now, and I think getting the lighting into this area is really kind of the thing that makes it pop, if I'm being completely honest. Of course, I haven't viewed it at night, and we won't view it at night in this episode, but I think just the look of these lampposts and the lights on the side are perfect. Now this here, I tried to make a little alleyway that did a couple of different things, and what I really wanted, it was some washing lines hanging over the alleyway, so that is what we are doing here. I just thought it's a very sort of good look, and I thought it would look good. So now we are literally just coming in, placing these details down just to make it all look a lot nicer than it is. So I did toy around with, could I do some industrial stuff? No, we're going to save that for now. But we can do things like these iron pipes, things like luggage, the dynamite crates, the luggage trolleys, all of these things that we will be looking at in the coming couple of episodes towards the end of this series, and all of that. Now, I do know that we have built a couple of rides, a couple of coasters and stuff, and we haven't exactly walked through them at guest level. Well, that will be coming later this week. We will have just a lovely little bonus episode where we look through everything we've done so far before we move on to this final area. And there are still a couple of blank spaces in this park that kind of don't have anything in them. I've got a couple of plans for them, but I don't know if that will be an on-stream thing, an off-stream thing, because I don't think it's going to be kind of massive amounts of rides or stuff. It's just going to be things like office space and all that, because we don't really have any backstage areas to this park, so it might be a wise idea to get something like that in. So yeah, you can see me here sort of placing these things down. It's all set dressing at the end of the day. And I believe we are coming now to the end of the time-lapse segment, so I will see you in a moment in real time. So, welcome back to real time. Yes, it has been a little bit of an eclectic episode in terms of we haven't really done much. You'd expect us to have started working there, but instead we have finished, and I thought I'd pop out here before we pop in to see what's going on. So if I come all the way through here, you can now sort of start to see what this looks like, and really this has had exactly the desired effect that I wanted. It's got all of the faux Tudor, it's got kind of that almost historical vibe that I was looking for, and if we come look at it from this end, I think it looks so much better from this end. This is the Pibbleville Victorian town. And yeah, I think it just acts as a really nice historical piece, and it just gets... It uses that little piece of space that we had, and does it do anything? Not really, but we don't necessarily need every bit of space to be a ride or a ride or a shop. Sometimes we can get away with just doing something small, something nice, like this. So if you have enjoyed this episode, then please do give me a like, give me a follow, possibly even a subscribe if I'm lucky enough, and I will see you in the next episode. Ta-ta for now. Roll that outro.